Okay, everybody, thank you for coming to Digression Sessions Volume 3. Today we have on deck, it's the myself, Lirpa Strike, and Stephen Bradford Long. And we're starting to call ourselves, we're Substack's first power throuple. So I'm pretty sure everybody in the audience knows you guys, since you've both been, Lirpa's been on many times, Stephen once before. But you want to briefly introduce yourselves, and we'll get into the what we're calling terrible dating advice, because basically Stephen, Lirp, and I have been talking kind of offline, I guess in the DMs, which is technically online, how it would I think it was like when we first started talking forever ago, Lirp, I was like, wouldn't it be fun if we did a dating advice show, which would be called Terrible Dating Advice, because we have both been in relationships for 10 years, as has Steven. So we're basically doing the thing that boomers do, is like, oh yeah, just go up and talk to the manager, shake his hand, and you'll be able to get a job. But that having been said, I think it'll be fun. So you guys want to introduce yourself? And we'll jump into it.
You go first, Lirpa.
Okay. I'm Lirpa Strike, and my publication is called Just Saying, and it's just kind of about everything. I don't really have like a focus anymore. It's just kind of like personal stories and sometimes some, lukewarm takes on whatever's going on. And lately a lot of photography, because I don't know, just wanted to post pictures. So yeah, that's me on Substack.
Hooray. You also write about your romantic sexcapades.
Yes, that's true.
All the time. And they're excellent. All the time.
I'm glad you enjoy them.
Yes, I do. My name is Stephen. I'm Stephen Bradford Long. I write Sacred Tension on Substack, and I cover LGBT issues and men's issues, men's health, sexuality, and lots of philosophy and religion as well. So, but lately I've been focusing mostly on men's issues.
Mm-hmm. And as always, I'm Prester John Andrews. I kind of also have a ever-expanding beat, so to speak, write about everything from politics, history, culture. I've been kind of on a culture binge lately, and I'm moving towards that direction anyway, because politics is fucked, and it makes me depressed to talk about. So, for real. I hope nobody in the audience has stonks, because it sounds like that is fucked at the moment as well. So, yeah. That having been said, we're doing our terrible dating advice, like we said, but we will try our best to give some dating advice. We'll jump into it and do a fun little Discord and chatting along the way as well, because we like to do that here. So I don't know, Steven, you want to read off one of the first ones you have, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so yeah, I got two questions from people in my audience. They are both Gen Z, one a guy, the other a girl. And hold on. It's on here somewhere. It was on Discord. I had it right in front of me.
Professional podcasters, folks.
Yes, professional podcasters, amateur hour here. Okay, so I have two questions. One is quite hard to answer, so I will go with the less hard one to answer, which is, how do I date? How does anyone date? The apps are horrible. We all hate them, but nobody talks to each other anymore. Do I have to join a run club or something now? There's that one tweet that says, do married people feel like they got off the last topper out of Nam? And I feel like it's unfortunately true. Okay, so basically, how do you date? How do we feel as long-term partnered people? And do they have to join a run club? Those are the three questions.
So,
in this one question.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a good question. I would say, first of all, yeah, I kind of do feel like that. I've heard as well, somebody who sold all their stocks and the day before the stock market crash in 1929 or 2025, as it were. Yeah, I definitely feel like that. I met my wife on OkCupid, but this was over a decade ago at this point, when OkCupid was basically horny Facebook, where the understanding was that you were going to this website to date. And now, my more recent experiences, I saw everybody's like, oh, I'm just here for friends, blah, blah, blah. It's like, what the fuck are you doing here then?
So
right?
you met on OkCupid. I also met on OkCupid. John and I also met on
Back when it was
back
decent.
back in 2014 is when we met.
Yeah, that's probably exactly when I met my wife, interestingly enough.
Oh, I met my husband in 2015 on Facebook, actually.
Oh, so I think I'll just jump in here. I'm starting to see a through line between the three of us, even though, because if I remember, that having been said, though, because it was online dating, it sounds like the dating apps are trash. I don't know. I guess maybe I'll get into that a little bit later, but it seems like the dating apps have significantly changed, both in like expectations, also like back then, dating apps were still, I don't want to say fringe, but maybe less socially accepted. Not everybody was on there. And you were going on there with like the express purpose to date. But that having been said, the through line I was talking about, other than the obvious of it all being, dating apps or Facebook, if I remember correctly from your story, Lirpa, it was like a group for like a shared interest, right?
Yeah, it was actually the Satanic Temple, which is funny, but it was, yeah, because I had a bunch of friends who were involved in it, and he was involved in it, and so he ended up adding me as a Facebook friend because TST, our local chapter, was going to do some kind of pro-choice like demonstration or something that we were going to put together, and I said I would help. And so yeah, we became Facebook friends, and the event never happened, but we stayed Facebook friends. I unfollowed him because all he did was post pictures of his roommate's cats, and I thought it was boring, and I didn't know who he was. And then yeah, one day I put a thing on my Facebook and said, does anyone want to meet me downtown for a beer? Because I was like in between buses or whatever and had to wait a couple hours, and he joined me, and here we are.
Yeah. So that does seem to be both with myself and Steven. It was expressly for dating. For Lirpa, it was like expressly for a purpose. So that does seem to be the winner, right? Find some sort of group activity thing, some kind of shared interest. And I guess that would be harder, right? Because it's been sort of a little while since I've dated. But that having been said, like, you have to have some sort of reason that you're there. I don't know. What do you guys think? Because it sounds like the dating apps are just so overcrowded that people also use it as social media. But if you, I don't know, maybe start something, go to something. I don't know. What do you think?
So what stands out to me actually about OkCupid versus Tinder, for example, all of the other apps, Grinder, etc., is that it felt OkCupid back in the day felt less gamified.
For sure.
And so when I look at the apps now, everything is based on snap judgments. It is based on very minimal information about the person.
Yeah.
You're making split-second judgments about someone on the basis of their appearance, their photos, their profile, and so on and so forth. But I think that the truth is that you never really get a 100% match with someone in terms of what you like. You, like Dan Savage said, you get a 70 or an 80%, and then you sand off each other's rough edges over time. And that just takes getting to know each other. And so I feel like there's a lack of friction in the dating world, and friction, not sexy kind of friction, but literally just friction. It requires time. It requires investment. It requires getting to know someone over a period of time, and the new apps just do not allow for that. It is all so fast. And I think what made OkCupid work when we were on it a decade ago was that they had these vast questionnaires, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions, and you would just answer these questions when you were bored in line at Wendy's or whatever. They would just throw up these questions for you to answer, and then it would compile the responses to your answers, and people could go through that and could take time to like explore the person that you are. Right. And so there's a cat invading.
Yeah, sorry. She's putting her face up in the.
Is that Hank?
This
the
is
cat?
Hank.
E,
Yeah.
sorry, didn't mean to misgender your cat. He's a handsome boy.
He is a very
He's a
handsome boy.
handsome boy.
Yeah. So that, I don't know, that just strikes me as a really important difference. And so the question is how to make it less gamified, how to make dating less fast. And I think that okay, so that's the problem that I see. I don't know if you agree with that problem or not.
No, 100%.
Okay.
I do
And
too,
a quick little thing I want to insert. The interesting thing I found about that too is that it's better that there was those questionnaires and you would have like your percentage matching. That having been said, I think those were better. It was one of those things, like, at least for me at the time, I was living in a small town in Wisconsin. The dating pool was equally very small. So at the time, like, again, this is, us being like, 30-something-year-old boomers, because back in my day, OK Cupid was about a match percentage, not gamifying. But
Yeah.
that match percentage was only so accurate, because I remember
Absolutely.
multiple times where somebody, like, we were like 97% match on paper. We met and there was no chemistry.
Yeah,
and there was one girl I dated for, I don't know, 6 or 7 months, not a particularly long time. And it ended up not working for a lot of different crazy reasons. And I'm sure that'll be a fun story for some point. But we, on paper, like, we met in a different context, and then we talked a little bit. It's like, oh, okay, this seems cool. And then I ended up seeing her again on OkCupid and messaging her, but we had like 30% match, and we had great chemistry.
Yes.
So that only goes so far, and I think
Yeah.
it's gotten significantly worse when you're just looking at a picture, like you said, and some pretty surface level information, because it used to also be encouraged. Write this long ass bio. And you can, ask questions based on that. Whereas now it seems like, from the little bit I've seen, like, it's like you're talking, if you ever talk to like somebody who will punch up your resume, like, get it to bullet points, get it short down, easy to read, and something that you could see in like a smartphone. And also, like, smartphone versus desktop, because back then, like, smartphones were a thing. They were just starting to take off, but the majority of my experience was, OkCupid on desktop. And then there was the expectation they would use that to either meet in real life or like text, at the very least.
Totally.
Yeah. You know, one thing that was always my biggest complaint about like Tinder, when I used it shortly after it came out, but only briefly. And it was for that same sort of reason that I quit, was that it didn't seem like anyone was reading bios, like I get messages from people who seemed completely incompatible, or, just things like that. And it would drive me a little crazy, because like you had all this space to do it. I mean, it wasn't as expansive by any means as OkCupid, which I really liked, but people still didn't seem to read them. And I almost want to say, like, that's the like solution, is to write and read these bios. But at the same time, I mean, people aren't doing that now, so it's going to make a change. I think the gamified thing is what stops us from bothering, in a way, from even trying.
It also, so I was recently listening to a podcast. I don't know if any of these stats are correct, but when stuff gets gamified and when stuff speaks to when it becomes really easy to hone our preferences to like a razor sharp edge, well, that results in things like a huge number of women setting their filters on the dating app to only showing men above 6 feet. Well, you've just taken out most men.
Right.
And so there's something dehumanizing about the apps, where, when John and I met, neither of us are, I would say, supermodels, but we came to love not just the beautiful aspects of each other, but also the unconventionally beautiful aspects of each other, and that only comes with time. That comes with kind of growing together over time and being able to look at a person now a decade later and say, oh my God, you're so gorgeous, you're so beautiful, in a way. They've just woken up in the morning and drinking coffee and or tired after work, and it's that kind of depth and tenderness and intimacy that the apps do not allow to happen, because it requires time, friction, and most importantly, imperfection in each other. And so, moral of the story, yes, go to the running club. The answer is yes. Well, but so I'm also reading a book right now called Platonic by Marissa G. someone. And it's about friendship. It's about how to make friendships. And it's wonderful and brilliant. And she argues that friendship needs to be elevated to the same level as marriage. And I agree. But a lot of the rules that she says that she puts down for making friends, I think just also apply to making partnerships, to finding partners. And so she talks about having to make the initiative, having to show up consistently. We have to show up consistently at that bar, at that club, at that church, so on and so forth, at that thing, whatever it is. And so then the mere exposure effect starts to kick in. And the mere exposure effect is when we prefer people just because we see them more. Right. And we come to like people more just because we see them more. And that's how we make friends, but it's also how we find lovers. It's also how we find partners. She says several other things. Yeah, everyone go by Platonic. It's about friendship, but I feel like it probably applies to dating as well. But I mean, the problem that I have is that beyond identifying the problem, I have very few answers of how to actually do this.
I was going to say, we're doing a really good job on analysis and agreeing with the premise of this person. Was this person a man or a woman? So you said you had one of each.
A woman. This is a woman.
Okay. So I feel like we definitely want Lirpa's perspective, because I feel I think it's interesting we have we should have had a lesbian on, because then we would have the full swath of experiences, right? But I feel like the experience of men and women on dating apps is very different. The thing I've said before is, like, if you're a man, and at least in the heterosexual space of things, you're going to have to send 10 messages to get one reply, and for a woman you're going to need to like receive 10 messages that's not just like one word answer like you mentioned, or like asking for feet pics or something.
Right. Yeah, I think you guys nailed it when you said, like you can't. The thing about men and women that are different, when it comes to attraction, is that, like, for women it doesn't always, like, we need to see your face move, you know what I mean? And like on an app where all you see are still pictures, it's you're not even seeing what the person actually looks like, for one thing, not to mention, people, and I don't know, I hate to generalize, but everyone who's said this, I completely agree with them. When I look at my own like history and who I've been attracted to and things like that, I don't really get attracted to someone until like I'm not going to look at a picture and decide I want to date somebody based on their picture. And also one other thing, I'm sorry, this is kind of disjointed, but going back to when my husband and I met, and why this whole thing about like getting to know each other in person is important. Like, he had told me in a laughing sort of way that he didn't find me attractive at all on Facebook. He thought that my pictures were super unflattering. And then he'd completely changed his mind when he met me in real life. Yes. And I think that's hilarious, because it happens so often. And that's the thing that a lot of people complain about when it comes to men's profiles on these things, is that they actually don't know how to take a very good picture of themselves. And so you can't even tell they're attractive in the first place.
Boomer
you know
dad
what
picture.
I mean? Yeah, exactly.
Gay men need to start like a mobile crisis unit for straight men's profile pics. Like,
Oh,
okay,
shit.
we're going to do some professional lighting. We saw on Tinder that you have horrible pics. Let us help you. Anyway, sorry. Go
Queer
on.
Eye reboot, basically.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think that
Yeah.
cuts both ways too, because let's be real, like, and I think we're all people who both like acknowledge the diversity of gender experience and all that in this podcast. That having been said, I think we're also all people who acknowledge like this increasingly radical notion in some circles that men and women are different creatures and have different like ways of viewing the world. Like we're visual creatures, like, and I think that's part of the reason. Like you just this is any woman who's like mildly attractive, and you can the opposite side being true, or like you can take the somewhat derisive joke of like the fat girl angle shot of like you can make yourself look a lot better with makeup and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that's a part of it too, like that it just becomes like a very dishonest and inorganic way of talking to people. Because I've had like people, it was a weird situation where a while back I was dating this girl, and because of circumstance we started seeing each other and we had like 2 dates, and then we couldn't see each other for a long time. So we were dating and doing it long distance for a while. And then when we did actually see each other in person again, I was like, oh, wow, I actually don't have a lot of chemistry with this person. They're not really my type, but because we'd been talking for so long, you can have this like very artificial like connection that you feel exists, but like without the physical component. And I'm sure there are people who do long distance and make it work and it works great. Without like that physical chemistry, then it can get very very unnatural.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's something fundamentally dehumanizing about it, where what and this is something that I've been thinking about quite a bit, which is human beings are we're made to partner up, and we're made to create friendships. We're made to create it will happen. It's like go into the right space, know how to do it. It will happen, but it needs to be fully human in order for that to happen. Like it needs, for it to happen well, like you need to be in a physical space with a physical person. You need to be able to see their laugh lines, and you need to be able to hear their bad jokes, and you need to be able to see them get awkward and blush when they say something they think is stupid. You need all of that. All of that is so important, and it's incredibly dehumanizing when all of that is stripped away, and it reduces our capacity to connect meaningfully. Marissa G. What's Her Nuts in this book Platonic was just saying about how expressions of vulnerability, we all think that vulnerability will work against us socially. We all think that vulnerability in a friendship or socially or whatever, that it will be too much, that it will make people like us less, that it will make people feel burdened. That does sometimes happen. But what she says is, more often than not, what all research shows is that it actually endears people to you. It actually makes people feel more connected with you, more emotionally intimate with you. It makes people feel trusted. And so that just goes to show, like, messy humanity, making the risk of being unattractive is part of being really attractive. So I don't know. Again, we're circling around the problem. We're not finding a solution.
I feel like the solution that we are not quite saying, but are saying, is just that everyone should leave the apps, which seems unrealistic. But I mean, I feel like that's literally the only solution. Literally join the run club, I mean, unless you don't like running, but
or whatever your version of the run club is, right?
Yeah.
Because I've said before that, like, right now, gender dynamics, at the very least, like for heterosexual gender dynamics, I've called it like middle school dance, because everybody's at the the opposite ends of the gymnasium. the first person to take a step out is, you'll probably do okay. Like, it's awkward, it's embarrassing, you might take an L, but at the same time, you're separating yourself from the pack. So maybe it is the run club. Like, I've had there's ironically there's apps, right? But like, something like meetup.com, find shared interest, go out in the real world one way or another, because it's everything, it feels like it's this very marketized solution where every aspect of human connection has been commodified. Like, we've been obviously, like, hammering this point home, but do something to meet up in the real world. Or even, like, I've actually, the inverse of it is, I've heard people talk about, like, Discord servers or something like that, where it's a smaller mindful community. And there's obviously negative sides to that, but finding some kind of, they talk about the third space where it's not exclusively platonic or exclusively like a bar or a because some people say that can be too much or intimidating, especially Gen Z from what I'm reading. But you're gonna have to be the one to take that first step. And I guess I'm curious to you guys' opinion too, because it's and especially because I really feel bad for Gen Z, for like a lot of their key socialization times have been either online or happened during the pandemic, where,
Yeah.
like I said, you take those first steps out into the gymnasium and it's going to be awkward, and you might take an L, so to speak, but it's a learning experience. You learn what to do and what not to do. And it's going to be kind of awkward and uncomfortable sometimes, but finding that way to flirt in an organic way where, like, you put your cards on the table, not even putting your cards on the table. I don't know enough about poker to make this metaphor make sense, actually. But you make that first little step and see how people respond. If they respond back, being respectful and tasteful about it, but at the same time, like, you have to be able to be a little flirtatious and see where it goes.
Sorry, Lirpa, you had something.
Oh no,
Okay.
go ahead.
So the other thing that comes to mind is that going to physical spaces means that you're going to meet other people who are also deliberately going to physical spaces because they are also sick of the internet.
Yeah.
Right. And so there is actually kind of a selection process going on there, where now the internet is the default. The internet is where young people meet each other by default. Meet space is where people are opting out. Meet space is how they are opting out. And so there's actually more of a social filter when you go to a physical thing. If you go to a church, if you go to, I am 100% a believer in using church as a dating field. Like, go to a church.
How people used to do it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Go to a book club, go to a knitting circle if you're a lesbian, because it's all women there. Go to, but the point being, the internet is now the default meeting place, which means that if you go to an actual physical space, you will meet other people who are also sick of the internet, and they are there because they are opting out of it. And I actually just recently had this experience where, again, this has to do with friends and not romantic partnership or dating. But I had this exact experience where I started going to a men's group. And what I found were there were a bunch of guys who wanted to be friends with each other. They were there because they actively wanted other people to be in their lives. And they were opting out of just finding people in an online space because they were sick of it. And so the same thing will be true of people opting out of online spaces to meet romantic partners.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And one other thing, this is going to be controversial, I'm sure, for this day and age, but when I look at my dating history, I met a lot of guys at work, like at various jobs. And this might have been also because it seemed like every place I worked was just filled with people like exactly my age who were like
Mhm.
doing the same kinds of things. And so it was almost like an accidental dating pool in half these jobs anyway. Now I know that there are two things. Like one, everyone's working from home, and two, there's a lot of fear about asking people out at work, and for good enough reason, I think. Like on the one hand, there's the whole fear of like being accused of harassment, but then there's also just the idea that if the answer is no, it's going to be really awkward to work with them. But that is kind of an organic place to meet people, and I wonder if that option is available for some people, that they might maybe reconsider like getting to know their coworkers on a different level, if they are within the peer group and everything that they are a part of.
It has become progressively taboo to do that, though.
Yeah,
Like
it
it's, because as we culturally become more concerned about hostile work environments, sexual harassment at work, that's just becoming so much. But on the one hand, that's good because sexual harassment should not happen at work.
right.
On the other hand, work, I think, used to be the primary way people would meet each other. They would meet each other
Yeah.
through friends, or they would meet each other at work, if I am visualizing the graph that I saw
Mhm.
correctly.
And yeah, friends too. I mean, so many of my friends came from jobs like, my closest friends out here, I worked with at both an insurance company and, Ruby Tuesday. We were all servers together. So, and that was years ago. We're
Yes,
still friends.
the service industry is still
Oh,
lawless.
yeah. If
Mhm.
you, yeah, just go get a part-time job as like a server, even a host, whatever. You'll meet plenty of
Absolutely.
people.
Work at a
Mhm.
hotel, you'll meet lots of people.
Yeah.
Also,
Or kitchen.
or a kitchen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
I mean, but also the person asking this question is a woman, and I wonder, I don't know, Lirpa, you can give your perspective on this. My impression is that men are now really scared of initiating. Young men, they don't go up and ask people for their number. They are afraid of coming off as creepy. They are afraid of being weird. Because of, Gen Z grew up in the era of Me Too. And so the impression I get is that young men are far more nervous about making the first move, which means that this young woman can be the alpha female and can make the first move.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's like a turnoff for women. I'm gay. I live exclusively in man world, so I don't know if women prefer not to do that.
Okay, here's my take on this. Like, I never had a problem being the initiator. I guess I would always make it super obvious if I was into somebody. But I wonder the opposite thing, or the same thing, just differently gendered. Like, I wonder if it's a turnoff for men, like for straight men to be asked out by women, like so directly these days, because it didn't seem to be the case when I was dating, like,
Yeah.
I mean, people seemed happy to be approached rather than, not, or guys did, that is. But I don't know. I mean, I hear that right now, and that's just because of like the parts of Substack where I hang out, like a bunch of red pill dudes and all this stuff all over my timeline
Mhm.
who are like, don't be too masculine, ladies, we don't like that. So, I gotta wonder too,
Mhm.
like, is your average normie dude gonna be turned off by, at least like this generation's average normie dude, gonna be turned off by a woman asking him out? So what I guess I would say, what I would do in this position is I would do what I've always done, make it super obvious that I'm into somebody. And then
Mhm.
probably, and this is probably where it gets tricky, like say we're at work or we're part of the same run club or whatever, I might ask if they want to hang out, like not directly ask for someone's, like for a date or something, but just to hang out to get to know somebody. And at that time, that's when I think the next step would be asking them out, or, if they don't ask you out, if you gauge interest, but they're not doing anything about it, as a woman, I think that that's probably the time to go for it because they might be scared. But I'm curious what PJ would have to say about that. Like, how do you think straight men feel about, women being the aggressor or
Mhm.
whatever these days?
It's worth pointing out that none of us here are straight men.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
Anyway, go
I
on.
am predominantly heterosexual. I'll say, like, what is that? Like a 2 or 3 on the Kinsey scale. I don't know how that shit works anymore. But regardless, and that's it's an interesting dynamic. So the two things I would say is I always really liked it. It was always really, really nice. And granted, again, take this with a grain of salt, because this is the whole pitch of the show is terrible dating advice, right? Where this is it's a different world. So I always liked it. It was always refreshing. There was like, because also, like, it can be a minefield. Even, back then, it's like, wait, is she being flirtatious? Is she, just being nice? You can never really tell until, because I've definitely had those situations where, like, I was years back, I was I was already seeing my now wife, but I went to a bar. One of my friends really liked doing karaoke. We'd all go together, and I was a designated driver, and I was just making conversation with the bartender, who was a woman. Just like, I was the one non-drunk redneck guy in the bar. We were just talking all night because I was the DD. I had like one or two beers just because, I can handle my liquor and still be okay. But regardless, later in the night, oh yeah, can I buy you a drink? And she was being really nice. And, then near the end, she asked for my number, and I was like, wait, I thought she was just being friendly. And looking back was like, oh yeah, I see all the signs. Because men, like, part of it, like, I think there is, like, always that joke, right, that every man's like, oh, I don't understand the signals. And I think like partially that's true, because I think, women are less overt with your it's not signals than you think you are sometimes.
Yeah, maybe.
And it's always, and again, this is always individual, right? But it can be a difficult line to walk for sure. But I generally like it. And maybe, like, but that having been said, I think the vast majority of heterosexual women prefer men making the first move and prefer them being more like masculine and aggressive like that. So I think that's probably something that goes both ways. But it also seems like, I don't know if it's a temporary thing or it's just something that becomes cyclical, that, maybe the gender dynamics have changed and women are the ones who are going to be more aggressive right now. Because again, I've had people talk about that, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I think I don't know to the degree to which it is overstated or it's accurate, like the environment of fear because of something like Me Too. But it seems like that's definitely a factor. I remember reading some study recently, like, like 60 some odd % of like men under 40 or men under 30 or something like that said they never approached a woman. But
yes,
I think
absolutely.
Yeah. Here's the thing with either of these things, whether it's a woman trying to give out I keep saying signals, or a man, trying to make that move, like, I feel like unless you're being like, it's a really, really strict work environment. If you're just saying, hey, do you want to like hang out? Oh, you like this, I like that, and trying to do it platonic, I don't think you're going to get slapped down that hard and have HR come after you. Like, use a little bit of social skills, try to figure it out. Like you said, you feel it out and say, okay, ask to hang out platonically, and then kind of go from there. There's that gradual stepping up that happens, but I don't know, maybe younger people, I feel like they've missed those steps,
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I often just fail to appreciate in like every sphere of life. Okay, take the topic of pornography. It's really hard for me to remember that Gen Z were exposed to pornography, some of them at the age of 9 or 10, and a lot of them had just ready access to it, whereas our generation did not. We were starting to have more ready access to it, which means that Gen Z has a fundamentally different relationship to sex. Because during that kind of crucial period of development, like early teens, just through the entire teens, through high school, there was ready access to porn on mobile devices at any time of day. That was not true when I was in high school, which means we're from a different world. And then, but then also the fact that Gen Z is socialized, like the social, not just their perception of sex, but also their social life was developed on the internet. And that's like their native language. That was also not the case with me in our generation. So the thing that I sometimes feel like the advice that people like us would give is to other people who were raised in the same setting as us, who developed the same skills as us. Like when we say go to a bar or go to a running club, people our age actually know how to fucking do that. I'm not sure that Gen Z even knows how to do that. They don't even have these socialized skills, some of them, to show up at a place and start talking to people. They're like, how the fuck do I even do that? And that's a chasm that I don't even know how to address. Like, that's a difference that I don't even know how to deal with, other than, but going back to what one of you was saying about women approaching people for dates, or just approaching people for platonic coffee. Marissa G. Franco, what's her nuts? I think that's her name. Hold on, let me look this up, because I'm just
3 times the charm.
3 times the charm. Yeah, I've mentioned her 3 times now. I need to get her name right.
Yeah, the Marissa What's Her Nut of, like, the Massachusetts What's Her Nuts is, I think it is.
Okay, yes, Marissa G. Franco, PhD. But I was listening to a podcast with her where this guy asked her, what he said was, what I hear from most people is, I want to ask someone out to coffee, or I want to tell someone, hey, you seem like a cool person, let's hang out. But they are afraid of coming off as weird or too much or too, just like, and to which her answer was, people are already lonely. Everyone is already lonely. And what people want is for someone to pay attention to them. Yeah. That is what people want. People want to feel valued. People want someone to notice them and be like, I value you enough. We have enough of like a spark to ask you out to coffee. That isn't too much. That's what people fucking want. And so we don't need to be afraid of approaching someone who we think is cool and being like, hey, do you want to hang out? She was basically like, that is not too much. That's absurd. People want that. I mean, it's thinking about the dynamic here, Prester, you were like, hey, these 2 degenerates who I've gotten to know, they're cool. I'm going to reach out to them and ask them to do this thing. We can do that exact same thing in life, and it isn't too much. That's actually what people are kind of secretly going through life wanting. And none of them are taking the initiative, because we all assume relationships happen naturally. They do not. They take effort. And so if someone just shows up and is like, hey, you seem cool, let's hang out, let's get coffee, let's go for a hike, let's watch a movie or whatever, that's what people fucking want. So go ahead and do it.
Imagine that.
I have a story about that. Like a couple years ago, it was right when I quit my job, so like a year and a half ago. I was looking up things to do, and I noticed that there was like a Friends of the Rappahannock club, and that's like the river closest to me. And they were doing like a fall cleanup so that, all the nasty beer cans and diapers that people leave along the riverbanks wouldn't pollute the river. And so I signed up to do it. And there was this girl there, and she looked about my age, and she had a camera, and we started talking. She was a photographer, and she's like, hey, why don't I get your information? And maybe we can like do brunch. And I was like, yeah, sure. And my first thought, because even though I wasn't raised in this world exactly, but I live in it. So I was like, yeah, we're never going to talk again. We'll be Facebook friends and that's it. But she called me like 2 days later and she's like, so where do you want to meet for brunch? And I was like, holy shit, she's for real. She wants to be my friend. And so,
Yes,
Mhm.
and it
yeah.
feels good. I mean, I had the exact
Uh-huh.
same experience. I had the exact same experience last month where a guy from the men's group, we'd started talking. We discovered that we're both outdoorsy types, and then he randomly called me on a Sunday and was like, hey, what are you doing today? Do you want to come help me scope out camping sites on this huge property? I'll just be like going all over this property trying to find potential campsites on like this homestead. And I was like, yes, absolutely. And it was like, oh wow, this guy actually wants to be a friend. And
Mhm.
it isn't too much. Like it was
Mhm.
very last minute. It was very out of the blue. He just called me one morning and was like, let's go do this thing together. And it wasn't too much. It felt good because this
Yeah.
other person thought of me.
Yeah,
And
that's always
then
nice.
I
Sorry,
just
go
want to
ahead.
add one. That's okay. I just want to add one more thing because going back to like the fear that Gen Z feels about this sort of thing, there was a moment like when she was asking me, like we had made the plans or whatever for brunch, and I was thinking, like after the fact, after I was excited and it was about to be time to go meet her, I was like, man, that thought came into my head, like I hope she cancels. This is weird. It's going to be awkward. I don't really know her, you know. And I
Yeah.
wasn't going to cancel because like I didn't want to be that dick, but it she didn't cancel and we met and it ended up being awesome. We hung out for hours and we had a lot to talk about. And so I just want to say, like, push past that fear as much as you can because it's
Mhm.
probably not going to be anywhere near as bad as you think. And if it is, you can just block them. That's what people do these days. You know what I mean? It's not really, unless you meet
Mhm.
them in real life somewhere, but you know what I mean?
I
Mhm.
think I think what I'm hearing is that socialization for friendship happens before romance. Like
Mhm.
first you have to know how to make friends. And
Yeah.
if you don't know how to make friends, then you won't know how to date because it is
Mhm.
in the context of friendship and those kinds of social networks and communities. That's how you meet people in the real world is through friends and doing
Yeah.
things with friends, and then a spark will happen with someone. And so it's like, okay, so you want to date, first learn how to make friends.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That,
Start with friends and then it will and then tackle dating later. But just
mhm.
Mhm.
fucking start with friends.
Well, especially because kind of was, as I was alluding to earlier, like somebody who you have perfect chemistry with on paper, according to some algorithm of a dating app that's designed to keep you using it, is, maybe not necessarily the best way of gauging your actual compatibility and chemistry with somebody. And to put one more fine point on it, maybe we should jump to the next question if you guys are cool with it. That
Yeah,
does seem to
totally.
be the through line of, um, it. I know we'll pretend that like you were either of you guys were single, and it's like and or this guy was gay, or you were a lesbian, Lirpa. That's like a good first step, right? Oh wow, we have this similar interest. We'll start hanging out. Maybe there will be something there. Maybe not. Maybe you'll still just be friends. Maybe you will shoot your shot and you'll lose. And maybe you'll end up married. You really can't tell. So
Exactly. Make
that's
okay.
that.
Oh my God, I need to write a article about this. Make friends before you start dating. It's about making
yeah,
friends. It's about
There we
knowing
go.
how to make friends. We found the answer.
we
There you
Great.
did.
go.
And
So
also everyone go read Platonic by Marissa G. Franco. It is excellent. Okay, carry on.
I think that's our answer for that. Very long winded, but hey, this is called the digression sessions. It is what it says on the tin, right? So this is kind of related, but so from Scatterbrawn on Substack, we have why are young men not encouraged to date while still figuring out if they want marriage? I've heard some people say this should happen, but the general gist I get from the broader conversation is don't waste a girl's time. And again, that's from Scatterbrawn on Substack. And I'll probably just throw this right to Lirpa because I feel like this is I don't know. I couldn't tell if this person was a man or a woman, but it's a very I feel like directed at women. And I just have to step out real quick. My dogs are being barky little shits. I'm gonna deal with that, and I'll be right back.
Shall we keep talking? I guess so. Oh, well.
Well, I will weigh in on that because I've never wanted kids, so it's hard for me to relate to the reason why people are going to say don't waste a woman's time, because that, I think, is like the backbone of that sort of statement, is like she's going to be too old to, like have all of your children by that point, and maybe she wants them. But putting myself in that mindset, I think there's a fine balance there. I think you do want, dating, the whole point is to see if you want to marry this person or be with them for a longer period of time. It's to get to know that. But yeah, I'd say some people put an arbitrary sort of time limit on it. They say if it's been a year and you're not engaged or something, then, you should end it. And maybe an arbitrary time limit is the thing that will help. But young men and young women both do need that time. That's what dating is. Like, just to go back to that, it's getting to know somebody to see whether or not you're compatible enough. So, I don't even agree with that advice 100% about don't waste a girl's time. I think don't waste each other's time, but that's what dating's for. Just don't drag it out unnecessarily long. Make sure you have the same goals.
I have to interrupt because I'm so distracted by Prester John holding two dogs under his arms, but for a second I could just see their heads on either arm, and it looked like you were like breastfeeding these Chihuahuas. Like you were revealing.
Say you want to breastfeed your Chihuahuas.
I that's the only way to feed your Chihuahuas is to breastfeed them. It was like that
Many
story.
people are saying this.
Well, yeah, there was that story about the woman who was breastfeeding her hairless cat on an airplane and got it was a whole fucking thing, and they had to be grounded.
They have very sharp teeth. That would be
I know. I'm thinking about
nips
it
of steel.
as we speak. But no, she apparently had a hairless Sphinx cat in like a bag, and she was nursing it on the plane.
And this is why you want to meet people in real life, folks.
This is why you're
going to end up single and breastfeeding your cat.
I do actually want to meet that woman. I have so many questions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I have completely derailed this. Okay, so going back to the question, Lirpa, you were basically saying I agree but disagree.
Yeah. Basically, to sum it up, that's what dating's for. So while I understand the concern about like people who, I don't know, might be in their 30s or something, and like the women who are like, hey, I've got a limited amount of time before I have the kids I want to have or whatever, so don't, date me for 3 years and leave me on just to dump me and never marry me. I totally get that. But,
I wonder if this person is also speaking to a mismatch between guys wanting hookups on average and women wanting emotional connection and a boyfriend. Whereas,
that could be too.
Whereas maybe some guys are approaching dating as just a place to have fun, without much emotional connection. Whereas maybe the women are annoyed at that. They're like, I want a partner. I want someone who is responsible and mature and handsome and all of those things. And why are there just all these men wanting to just fuck for a night? Maybe is that what this person is getting at?
It could be, because that sounds like the situationship thing that we hear a lot about.
Explain situationship. I don't know what this word means.
My understanding of it is that it's basically like the Zoomer version of friends with benefits, and then you just don't go anywhere with it. But usually the female, maybe the male, I don't know, but I always hear women complaining about this more than women or more than men. Usually it's like the woman, like you were saying, Stephen, does want to be in some sort of relationship or wants like at least a clear answer from them if they want to be or not. And so, they feel like they're being strung along by these guys that just, want to booty call them every week or something like that.
Yeah.
In which case, like the thing that I would say is that like if that's a situation that you're in as a woman, and it's been a while and you're not getting a clear answer, the answer is no, so like you either want to just be happy with the way it is until you find the person that you actually want to be with, or that wants to be with you back, or just like end it altogether, because it's not going to, it's very
Yes.
rarely going to change. You're not going to change his mind. If he
Yeah.
wanted to be with you, he'd want to be with you.
I
Yes,
feel
get
like,
her good up the pot. Yep.
yeah, well, we've talked a lot about like, male deficiency of like not being able to gather your courage and shoot your shot. I think this is the other side of the coin of like, I feel like, that's one of the most common things people complain about in heterosexual dating is like, a woman not being honest about what she wants and what she needs and just expecting the guy to know. And like, again, I think that comes with emotional maturity and just saying, hey, we've been dating for 3 years. Where's this going? This is what I want. Can you give that to me? And I generally don't support like ultimatums, but you just have to be honest about what you want and what you're looking for. And sometimes somebody you're dating for a while is not necessarily the person you want to marry, if we're being honest with ourselves. And sometimes like a guy just needs that kick in the ass, like, oh, I have been taking this for granted. I have been, not living up to what I should be,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this world is so foreign to me because I live in gay land,
Mhm.
and
What's the gay side of it? Because we have I'm gay listeners as well. So
oh geez, I mean, I've
And
been
we have
out
at
of,
least one gay question.
oh, we do have a gay question. So
because I feel like before we move on, I feel like that pretty much well answers that one, and we can move on to the gay one.
sure, okay, yeah. So and
Unless you
before
had more to say on it, go ahead. But
I don't know. Just I'm just thinking about the gay dating world and how fundamentally different it is from the straight dating world. I feel so lucky that I'm gay. Like for real. I know that because relationally, in terms of like sex and dating, I feel so lucky.
it is much more honest, I will say, from
It
my
is
time
so
in
much.
that world.
Well, like for example, it blows my mind. I was just talking to a girlfriend about this, how straight men that she has dated do not know how to ask their partner what they like. Whereas in gay land, first thing that ever gets asked, what are you into? What are you into? Yeah, those 4 words, the 4 magic words at the beginning of literally every single interaction. It's like the first or second thing that guys say to each other on Grindr. What are you into? Are you top, a bottom, side, bondage? If so, what type? Like, are you into
The
weird?
menu, so to speak.
Yeah, like and so from the very beginning, there's a conversation about sexual compatibility. From the very get-go. And when guys, apparently straight people, when they hook up, don't fucking do that.
That's
Depends on the
true.
circles you run in.
What's
That's
that?
true also.
Depends on the circles you run in.
Very
I'll say
true.
that.
Very,
'Cause
very true.
I've existed in both worlds, and this is I've heard the phrase, like everybody is gay now, because like back in the day, like something like Grindr is basically what Tinder is, and I think that definitely exists, or like in the kink world, from my experience there, at least for me. I don't know if this was like a gay straight thing or a personality type. At first, that was interesting and enticing, but at a certain point, like I remember at one point, like this girl gave me literally a menu and a checklist, like check off what you're into. It's like, god damn, that is so
no, I'm not into that.
unsexy.
That's such a
I'm
turn off,
very,
right?
yeah,
I'm
because I
not
was
into
like,
the menu.
can we just like start vanilla and then like, because also it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, like there have been things, I won't get too X-rated, but like there are things that on paper I didn't think that I was into, but because I was with somebody and we had like a specific dynamic and a specific chemistry, I was like, oh, I am into that with you, and you
Yeah.
kind of like negotiate, you figure
Absolutely.
stuff up. There's something,
Mhm.
and I think that's also a part of it is it seems like maybe that's more common now. Maybe even for Zoomers, for what I've seen, like modern heterosexual dating, is the menu is very much a turnoff, and it could be, I would imagine that could be very intimidating, especially if you're like 21 and you have limited sexual experience, and they're talking about bondage and all this stuff. And like, for me at least, like, this is something that you ease into, you figure it out,
Totally.
you negotiate consent, all that stuff. So that's my asterisk for that question.
Yeah, I mean, to me,
Yeah.
there's a difference between asking what are you into and then giving someone a menu. Those are like two different because when I've had that conversation, it's like, what are you into? And sometimes the guy says, I don't know, I just came out. It's like, okay, awesome. It isn't so much about it. It is part of the negotiation. It is about there's a way in which it can become like weirdly structured and like categorized and taxidermied, which is like hot for no one, where it's like you're choosing, you're looking at like this menu of
I think
sex.
I said something the other day, like the what do you call it, the BDSM capital C community. Yeah, it's like, what if you think it's going to be this cool sexy thing like the goth club from the Matrix, but it's like, what if sex had HR and it was run by church ladies with blue hair and nipple piercings?
Yeah,
it's very, very not fun. And I don't know, like,
or the Vogans from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, just like so bureaucratic. And and so there are different ways that the answer, there are different ways that the question, what are you into, that can go. And I think that depends on like the cultural context, where someone can say, in gay land, one of the very first things that it's asking is, are you a top or a bottom or a side? Meaning, should we even be wasting time talking to each other? Like, if I'm a top, you're a top, we're looking to fuck someone, why are we even wasting time talking to each other? We're not here to make friends. Like,
which is, again, what I was talking about, very honest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's extremely blunt. But also, like, in the gay dating world, it's just, I watch straight people go through these elaborate rituals to try to get laid. It's like I said elsewhere, it's like trying to watch someone hack into the fucking Pentagon or do like some like arcane ritual high magic by Aleister Crowley. Whereas in gay land, you want to fuck, it's just like you get on Grindr, you're like, hey, where are you? I'm here. What are you into? This and this. Okay, when are you available? And bam, you're good to go. I mean, but also the gay world, there isn't this anxiety of who asks who. There isn't this, there aren't those there are gender dynamics in the gay world, of course, because it's all men, but they're like the gender dynamics of, women feeling like men are not stepping up or whatever, or who makes the first move, the man or the woman. It's just like that doesn't exist. And it's so much freer for this kind of mutuality to exist. And it's more based on personality type rather than on one's sex. And so it's just a totally different world. And so one of the reasons why I watch dating discourse on Substack is because it's such an alien world to me. Yeah. It's all super interesting.
It's like deeply ironic that the way that we're supposed to, reproduce is so fraught with enormous differences. It just seems like completely dysfunctional that, we're practically opposite creatures, but it's necessary to get together to, to keep the population moving, but
to make this thing work. Okay, shall we go to the gay question?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
This is a very interesting gay question. I love this question. It is very unconventional. Okay. This is from a Gen Z guy. He is in his early 20s. He says, I'm a gay Christian who is only now beginning to process his own feelings and desires for romance and intimacy. I don't feel comfortable doing dating proper yet, nor Do things like hookups interest me? How can I find a relationship where amorous feelings can exist without needing to be tamped down? So where he can have amorous feelings and not suppress them, yet without entering into an explicitly romantic context. I fucking love this question.
It's interesting.
It's very interesting.
Do you want to give your expert opinion, or do you want the woman and the ostensibly straight guy to take a crack at it first? 'Cause I have
The two of you take a crack at it first. I have a ton of thoughts about this, but I will share them later.
Okay,
So go for
so Lirpa, do you want to say anything?
You start.
Okay, so right off the bat, so I remember you saying just a second ago that it's so much easier, and you're watching these elaborate haka dances essentially with straight people, right? That having been said, honestly, that's part of the fun for me, at least, or it was there. It's sometimes annoying, but also sometimes like you like the flirtation, trying to, at least me, that's something that I enjoy. And having been in the other world a little bit, I feel like the what's the word I'm looking for, bluntness of top bottom, hey, you want to fuck, it's not for everybody. And there's like the gay community / gay dating world, capital G, capital C, and there's people who are gay and don't want to be a part of that. And I've known a lot of people like that too, for whom I don't think that's because I've said before, there's nothing inherent to being gay that makes you want to do that 1970s clubbing kind of world, right? Other than the fact that generally speaking, men are more not I think men and women are obviously both sexual in different ways. That having been said, I think maybe it's a personality type, and also this person being Christian and religious, that's a very difficult line to walk. There are obviously as you obviously know, branches of Christianity, like probably the majority, I don't know, it's maybe changing now, but a lot of Christianity is just like straight up no. But I also see I've known a lot of gay people, gay men or lesbians who yes, I am gay, yes, I'm a lesbian, but this faith is a important part of my life that I don't want to give up. And you can find churches that exist.
Episcopal churches are great for that. Everyone's gay at Episcopal churches.
Yeah, or like UCC.
True.
Right? So people want that, and I think I want to be delicate saying this, but I think there are downsides to that. Let's just go for it and fuck. I think it makes, from what I've seen, it can make it much more harder to find a monogamous relationship.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, there are many downsides. 100%.
STDs are, and I don't say this punitively, it's just a pure fact. STDs are significantly higher in the gay community, and especially for if you're somebody younger who's A, just trying to figure out how to date, B, just trying to figure out, hey, I'm gay, but I'm a Christian and I want to do this. I don't want to be a part of that world. Not because you hate yourself for being gay, but because that's, for some people, that's just not your personality type, and that's not what you want to participate in. So I think when you're talking about these elaborate rituals that exist, I think and we talked about this on our solo podcast, and, we were touching on meeting at church. For a lot of people, I think these rituals exist for a reason, and it's a way to have a socially acceptable way to feel each other out and make sure that you have the same values, et cetera, et cetera. So all that having been said, I would say, do your research in your area. My condolences if this gentleman lives in a small town in Alabama, but pretty much any even mid-sized town now, it's going to have Episcopal Church or UCC, and you can find somebody who shares your values, and you can get that middle ground where you don't want to go to gay conversion therapy, but at the same time you don't want to LARP like you're living in the Castro district in the 70s,
Yeah.
Castro district in the 70s was not a good place to be.
My point exactly,
Yeah.
Well, if I were going to offer my opinion here, the thing that sticks out the most is that he wants to be able to be open amorously, but without dating or hooking up. Because I'm trying to think of the straight version of that. Like, what's analogous to that in the straight world where you can be like openly, I don't know, like practice being flirtatious, I guess. I mean, is that really what amorous just kind of means, is being flirtatious without expectation? Because I guess it's hard for me to figure that out other than the Episcopal Church thing, which I say in jest, but I did grow up in that church, and that's how, you know, it's very gay friendly typically, and that's cool. I don't know what denomination he is, but, or if he's willing to change or anything. But anyway, I mean, you can be flirtatious just about anywhere. I mean, in just about any context where you have like group activities. So I would almost say like join a men's group or something like Stephen has. Maybe if there are other, like find one that's like gay friendly, maybe you can, you know, you can kind of practice flirting in that sort of environment. Yeah, that's what I'd have to say.
Okay, so excellent thoughts, everyone. Well done. I think that what this listener is getting at is wanting emotional intimacy with someone without it necessarily being erotic. Or erotic is a charged and complicated word, without it being sexual. Let's go there.
Yeah.
Let's say that. So without it being a hookup and without it being dating, but still looking for something that is very emotionally intimate. And so I think that gay men are in a bit of a conundrum where gay men there are two desires, I would say, masculine needs that seem to collide with each other when it comes to being gay. So one is what's called intimate loneliness. Intimate loneliness is the loneliness that we feel when we want a partner, when we want sexual intimacy with someone. You want someone to wake up to in the morning. You want someone to go on a date with. It's a very specific kind of loneliness. But then there's another kind of loneliness, and that is relational loneliness. That's the loneliness that we feel when we don't have good friends. And in particular, there is, I believe, a particular subset of relational loneliness, and that is needing masculine friendship, needing male friends. I think that's very important for a lot of guys. Not every guy, but for a lot of guys. Now, gay men, and those friendships can also be extremely emotionally intimate. And I actually just wrote a whole article about this called The Lost Vows of Friendship, where, you know, I talk about very intimate same-sex friendships in the past and friendship rituals and vows in the past, and just how extraordinarily intimate and committed they were, but they were not homosexual in nature. Now, what gets complicated, I think, for some gay men is that they still desire both, right? They still have both of these needs. They still have the need for male friends and intimate male friendship. That's still very important. That's still important to me. I'm speaking directly from experience here. And also, they still have they still have intimate loneliness as well. So it's like these two tracks, these two desires. And if someone is not clear about what they are yearning for, they can get crossed, they can get confused, and so, which is why in the gay world you have so many best friends who fuck each other or you have, so, you know, it gets very complicated. And so the first thing that I would say is it's important that if we are going to accept one, we have to accept the other. If we are going to accept, if gay men are going to want amorous, and I actually really like the word amorous, because I've had amorous relationships with men that were non-sexual, friends who are very dear to me, friends who I consider brothers, but are non-sexual. But in order for that to happen, acceptance of one's sexuality is paramount. if one does not totally accept their sexuality, then and if one does not, and part of acceptance is being just incredibly aware of it and not judging it, and being totally accepting of one's sexual desires and noticing when they come up, so that when they come up you can be like, there's a thought, okay, cool, and then you let it pass. If you do not accept your sexuality, you won't be able to do that, because the thought itself triggers so much shame, right? So in order for a man to have, in order for a gay man to have emotional intimacy with another man and it be healthy, I think we have to fully accept both of these desires as they are and be fully cognizant of them. As long as one is tamped down, as long as one is suppressed or denied, as long as that is the case, then it will make having good friendships with men that much harder, right? The other thing that I would say is, if you're looking for an amorous relationship with another man, remove the requirement that it be with a gay man. Straight men, in my experience, there are some straight men who love friendship with gay men because they feel that they are actually able, assuming that they have gotten over their own internalized homophobia to a degree that allows them to do this. In my experience, a lot of straight men actually feel kind of more able, more liberated to communicate more vulnerably with a gay man, and therefore intimacy, emotional intimacy develops more there. And so if what we're looking for is emotional intimacy, sexual attraction doesn't need to be in the equation. In fact, the word platonic, a platonic friendship, it means the original idea is that platonic friendship is it's a spiritual friendship. It is so pure that it transcends the body, right? And so C.S. Lewis says, in Eros, you have naked bodies. In friendship or in philia, you have naked souls. And there can be naked souls between people between a gay man and a straight man, between two straight men, between two straight women, and so on and so forth, right? And so I would say, if this young man wants to cultivate intimate, amorous relationships with other men, go for it. In order for that to happen, full acceptance of one's sexuality is paramount. Number two is remove the requirement of and I don't know if this is a requirement at all, right? I don't know if this is a requirement for this person, but don't expect the guy to be gay. It can be any guy. And I feel like there's a lot more that I want to say, but I'll say more later, and I'll pass it off to the two of you for now.
Mm-hmm. Lirpa, you look like you have thoughts.
I just really like that idea of not, it didn't even occur to me. Like, I was stuck in this whole, like, I have to be friends with other gay men thing. But yeah, like, removing that requirement, if it is one, is a really good idea, because then you're not going to accidentally sort of like hook up with someone, and regret it later, because it's probably not going to happen with a straight guy,
Exactly. Yeah. I have some straight friends who I have been extremely close with. And one of the reasons they are so close is because is A, they trust me, but B, I have to just not allow myself to go there. It's like having sexual thoughts about your sibling. It's like, what? Right. You don't do it. And so, yeah, totally.
Yeah, and to kind of add on that, I guess I have the middle perspective there of, I would say, hey, yeah, like personally, like I love having gay male friends, because it feels like, I don't even want to say on average, because I feel like there could be like a different type of like fetishization of gay men, like, oh, they're all so like, in touch to their feelings, and like, it's kind of the same thing, like,
not true.
Yeah, but that's kind of what I was going to get. It's the same thing, like, oh, gay men are also stylish. It's like, Yeah, there's still dudes though. Have you been to like a gay club? Like there's so many of them.
They're
Yeah.
filthy. They're so filthy. Also, this gay dude is not fashionable. I'm just wearing like a hoodie.
Well, you wear it well. But
Well,
in any
thank
case,
you.
point being that especially like, um I kind of talked to you, and if you really want to know the specifics, we can talk off recording. But I talked about like I'm almost entirely straight, but I have like a very narrow attraction to a certain type of guy, or like it's more like type of person than necessarily even body type. But when I was in those worlds, like my very early 20s, and I actually I don't know if either of you read it. I wrote about like a auto fiction type thing called "The Time I Accidentally Went to a Gay Orgy," where
Oh yeah, I read that.
the long and short of it was did you read that one, Stephen?
I didn't, but I must.
So let me tell you. I'll tell you this story really quick because I think it's a funny story. And funnily enough, I told the story like on my first date with my now wife. So I had two gay guy friends that I was friends with, and I had just gone. I was like 21. I had just broken up with my first serious girlfriend. Very confused. Had a lot of big feelings. And I became friends with these two gay guys who I knew were like friends of my ex-girlfriend. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm gay. I'll experiment here. And it was fun. I had, some time experimenting, but I was still like, I was only 21. Like my sexual experience in general was still, relatively shallow. So like, I went to the bars and stuff. It's like, this is okay. I'm still kind of figuring it out. And, later on, like, I forget the fake names I gave them because I don't want to say their real names, but I had one who was like more like me, a very like reserved guy, very chill, not stereotypically gay and like his interests, although he was obviously like, more effeminate. And one was like the gayest gay guy who'd ever gay guyed, and very promiscuous, super fun guy, life of the party. So we went to this party. It was like this older gay guy, and I had a bunch of people there. And I was like, I'm gay, straight, it doesn't matter. I'm not necessarily a person who loves being in big parties. So, we went to, I just went out, like, we smoked a joint and went out on the porch. And, my friend, who's a little bit more reserved, he made a move on me. And I was like, I had to deal with like, it's not that, it's not men in general. It's like this guy I only like as a friend, and being on the other side of it, because I'd been on that side of like getting friend zoned by a woman. It's like, oh wow, what have I done? I've become the enemy. But then I was like, this isn't for me. Let's find our other friend. And it's like, oh, where's Jeff or whatever? And then he's like, oh, he's upstairs. And like, I didn't, because me being like bad socially in general, and not familiar with the gay world, not picking up the subtext. So I went up there, and we opened up the door, full on gay orgy, like, 10 guys fucking each other. And it was like deer in the headlights moment. And I was like, oh, he's like, all right, close the door or join in. I was like, I'm not, this is too much.
Close the door, join in.
Oh my God.
So I left and went home. But all that to say, so that was my story with that. But like, also like this guy with whom I really, really liked platonically, and we were good friends, but we just didn't have that at least I didn't feel that chemistry with him in that way, So I think that's something that exists, but at the same time, I think that's probably why, acknowledging the fact that homophobia exists, and there's probably, as I probably don't have to tell you, certain, straight guys who just don't want to be friends with gay guys, rightly or wrongly, because they assume, they might make a move like that. But to have it up and out front in the open, to know where you stand, so you don't have to deal with that ambiguity. But that having, for me personally, even now, like I like having a gay male friend because tend to be more comfortable being open and honest about emotion, or at least like maybe not even honest, but like open, because that's something that they've had to navigate more than your average straight guy.
A phrase that I really like is clarity is kindness. And so that's basically what I was hearing you say. Part of that is be very clear. And yeah, I see what you were just saying. Okay. I need to tell a story. What you were just saying, your story made me think of this.
Go ahead.
No, I'm part of this very large men's organization, and I won't say which one it is, but it's very large, and it has a local chapter, and I've really enjoyed getting involved, and it's also very gay friendly. But I had this conversation with someone. I was like, so how many guys here are gay? And he looked at me and he was like, officially or unofficially? Anyway, it was very funny. Okay, so here's another thing that I want to say that just occurred to me. There are 3 types of loneliness, I think. There is, and I already talked about 2 of them. There's intimate loneliness. There is relational loneliness or friendship loneliness. But then there's communal loneliness. And communal loneliness is wanting to be part of a cause greater than yourself. For me, for years, that was the Satanic Temple. But it's wanting to be part of a church, a movement, a body, whatever the case may be. And I think it's just really important for everyone to know that one person, to not confuse them. I think that a lot of straight men, for example, and I think the data bears this out, I think a lot of straight men will overinvest all of their different sorts of loneliness into their romantic relationship. And so they will look to their wife or their husband or boyfriend, if they're gay. They will invest all of that into their partner. So their need for kind of a community, their need for friends, but the truth is that we're multifaceted beings, and not every relationship, no single relationship can bring out every aspect of it. So there are parts of me that John does not necessarily speak to. I need other friends to do that. And so, John doesn't like to play Magic the Gathering. I have a group of guys who do. John doesn't necessarily like to run. I have other friends who do, right? So, but it's also, so I think it's really important to be cognizant of these different types of relationships and to not get them, it's very easy to get them confused with each other and to over invest when the fact is we are communal beings. We need a lot of people. We need mothers and fathers and grandparents. We need siblings, and we need communities, and we need churches, and we need best friends, and we need many best friends, or at least a small handful of best friends. And then we need some of us need a romantic partner. And I think it's just important to not over-invest multiple types of loneliness into one relationship that will not satisfy that. And so my solution is so I elevate all of these loves to the same level. I think that we live in a culture that over elevates romantic love and over elevates marriage. And the key is to not denigrate it. It isn't to pull it down. That's not the answer. I think sex is the most amazing thing ever. I think romance is the most amazing thing ever. One of the most amazing things ever. Instead, the answer, in my opinion, is to raise the other loves to the same status. So to me, the answer is to elevate community to just as important a status as marriage. It is to elevate friendship to the same status as marriage, and say we need to invest in friendships just as much as we invest in marriage. And so then when we do that, we're more likely to have all our needs met. And when I, like, if someone has the experience that I had last year, where I lost my entire religious community, and I looked around locally and I was like, I do not have enough friends I am lonely. I do not have enough friends. And that was very painful to realize. We don't want people to be in that position. And in order for people to not be in that position, we need to not overinvest our lonelinesses into one single relationship. I think that's the other thing.
Diversify.
Yes, you have to diversify your relationships. And there are many different types of intimacy. You have your friends that you get shit-faced drunk on mimosas with, and then you have your friends that you listen to classical music with, and then you have your like healthy friends who don't know about any of that, and you do yoga with them, and you lie with them. Your normie friends, and yeah, exactly.
God, you do have to lie to yoga people, man. No, my first yoga teacher training, not to get totally off topic, but hey, it's the digression sessions. But
Absolutely.
yeah, the yoga teacher trainer, he heard one guy in my class mention that he had some beers with his roommate, and he's like, how dare you? Like, he got so scolded for drinking beer. This guy was a terrible instructor. That's why it took me 2 tries to get certified.
I was a yoga teacher. I was a yoga teacher for 5 years. I would never do, but then I was famous. Right. I wasn't famous, but I was known for being like, oh, this is where the heavy smokers go.
Yeah.
This is the class for people who have never done yoga, who smoke a pack of cigarettes a day. Like, come to my class. You are my people. I'm trying to think if there was something.
And sorry, keep riffing. I have to jump out for just 1 second.
Okay, yeah. Keep riffing. Are you going to go breastfeed your Chihuahuas? Okay. So another thing that I think I want to say is, and this was actually a big realization for me recently, is that okay, so what this questioner is looking for is friendship, amorous, emotionally intimate friendship. I had the realization lately, which is that friendship in particular, the human mind is just made for it. We're evolved to be cavemen sitting next to each other, talking in grunts as we, skin a tiger.
What did I miss?
Or whatever. Well,
talking in grunts.
Okay. So no, okay.
No, I'll be right back.
This is just another thing that I was thinking about. So this young man wants an intimate friendship with other people, particularly with other men. But the thing that the realization that I had recently is friendship, if we know how to do it, friendship is abundant, because the human mind is just made for it. We're just made to connect. And so it's kind of like just watering a garden. If you water it, it will grow. You just have to know how to do it. You just have to know how to listen to people. You have to know how to take initiative. You have to know how to be adequately vulnerable. You just have to have some like 5 basic skills under your belt. 5 basic skills to continuously show up to the same thing, because spontaneous interactions is one of the most important features of one of the most important ingredients for friendship. Mm-hmm. And if you get like these 5 things, it's like growing a garden. You need sunlight, you need water, you need to weed it every now and then. Otherwise, it's really simple. And it doesn't have to be this complex thing. It's like if you pay attention to someone, if you feel that spark, and then if you continually bring presence to that person, it's just like friendship will just grow 9 times out of 10 is the realization that I've had. And and again, I recommend everyone read Platonic by Marissa G. Franco, because it's a guide for how to make friendships. Yeah,
I'll check that one out, because I think just to kind of add on what you were saying, because we have one more question. We don't want to go too long, because we have the stream a little later today still. But I think you hit the nail on the head to just be consistent with it. Since I'm somebody who, just by the nature of my personality or my upbringing or whatever it is, like, it's not easy for me to make friends and be emotionally intimate with people. So I have, it's either like I could never see you again and feel nothing, not because I hate you, or I get accused of being aloof a lot, which, maybe fair enough, or like I will literally die for you. But I think that, like you said, it comes with familiar. There does have to be that initial spark with friendship, not unlike romance. But it just becomes, the familiarity breeds intimacy and affection. Because I have,
Yep.
like I have it, and I think also like I'm very blessed, and not only like we were talking at the beginning of the podcast about, if you're in a long-term relationship, you feel like you got the last helicopter out of Nam. I have, much in the same way, I have a small but close-knit group of friends in real life who we get together pretty much every weekend. We'll like play D&D or watch a movie or just hang out, have a couple of beers and shoot the shit. A mixed gender friend group. And these people were not like, necessarily, I mean, maybe some not necessarily on paper, who you would like think because you never know who you're gonna become friends with, either like in real life or in the online world. Like, we've kind of become friends online, right? But we see each other pretty much every week. We're in like a group chat with each other, always texting, and these are people who like become a part of your life, and different things about them. Like, I had one of my friends recently, like, grew up very like in a very lefty atheist household, and he has recently converted to Christianity, and it's been a great process for him, and I'm really happy for him. And I wouldn't have necessarily thought I would be friends with somebody like that not even that long ago, and people with whom you have on the surface level different values. But I think also that's right now, like, it's doubly so true in the dating world. But people like, oh, I would never be friends with somebody who is a conservative Trump voter. Oh, I'd never be friends with some libtard who does pronouns or whatever. But it's much like in a family or an extended friend group, or even like a work setting. You will get to know people who are like, wow, I wouldn't have thought that I would be friends with somebody like that. I wouldn't have thought that we have common ground. But the more you're with them and the more you're consistently showing up, the more you find that you have things in common.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. Showing up, I swear, it's the hardest part. For me, it's the hardest part because I'm an introvert. But just like showing up consistent. I mean, this is why so many of us made our best friends in school when we were in grade school, high school, college. It's
or a shitty job.
Or a shitty
Right.
job. Yes, exactly. Because you're just continually showing up together. You're forced to continually show up together, and you just have these spontaneous interactions with, and that creates what's called the mere exposure effect, where you just come to like people more the more you see them. But then if you have the added spark, what you want eventually is exclusivity. What you want is to from that familiarity, you feel that spark, and then you just follow up on the spark. You're like, oh, that person is really cool to me. I feel like we could be friends, and then just fucking bro court that person. You like
I love that term.
Yeah, like bro court. That I've been bro courted, and it's very sweet. It's like a guy
Platonic crush.
Yes, I mean, I've been bro courted. Like, a guy will be like, I want to read a book with you and go for a hike weekly to talk about it. And I'm like, great, I'm so in. Let's do this. It's very sweet. But yeah, so what you want to do is, in that kind of setting of just continually showing up, you will eventually start to feel a spark with someone. And then when you notice the spark, you pursue it and you initiate and you say, hey, do you want to go to coffee? I heard that you're into XYZ thing. I am into XYZ thing too. Let's go do XYZ thing. And then like the friendships start to pull away. And C.S. Lewis talks about how, friendship is formed the moment two people look at each other and say, oh my God, you too? I thought I was the only one. And and so there's this moment when it pulls away from the group, and but in order for that to happen, first you just have to fucking show up every day for a year or 6 months or whatever. Yeah.
Put in your 10,000 hours, but for friendship, basically.
Yes,
Or whatever it is to
exactly.
learn a new skill. I'm trying to remember what the exact quote is.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what my friend group, like two of my best friends, one is like a more conservative Christian, one's like a prototypical, like, dyed-haired SJW woman. We all kind of still find a way to make it work and be friends.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we like.
Mhm.
Do we want to do one last question?
Yeah, I was going to
Or
say.
do we want to wrap it up? Okay, we can do one last question. Yeah.
I don't know how you guys doing for time, because I feel like the one last one we had, it's the kind of fun one, but I feel like we've kind of touched on gender dynamics pretty well at this point.
Let's go hard on gender dynamics.
Okay.
As long as we have time between this and our stream later.
Yeah,
we're good.
I think we've touched on it, so I think we can end on the fun one. So Laggy, who many of us know from the timeline, asks, when will women stop being gay? And by that he means not literally like lesbians. He DM'd me. We're talking like the terrible gender dynamics that we see right now. There's maybe the woman's perspective is great on this, and we've talked about the male perspective quite a bit. Like, when can we stop having this, post Me Too, what did I say? The middle school dance, gymnasium gender dynamics. When can this stop, and how can we move past it?
Well, if I could jump in here, I
Please
think
do.
on the one hand, it's hard for me to say like what other women are thinking, because most of my friends are guys, honestly, but I do see a lot of things that make me optimistic, which is that women are complaining that no men are hitting on them in places like the gym, which makes me optimistic because it means that the women who, and I don't know if these are the same women that used to complain that very thing happened to them. Maybe it's just too easy to say that they are, but the fact that women are complaining that it's not happening, I would say, means that women are ready to either let go of some of those, I don't know, collective sort of fears about like the overblown, exaggerated types, like the man versus bear sort of situation.
Oh God.
Maybe we're collectively ready to get over that, or maybe we're ready to be the ones to make the first move for a while, right? Because if enough women are mad about this, well, somebody's got to make the first move, right? So, but yeah, it always does kind of surprise me that more women aren't willing to do that. So I really think that that's like one prescription I would give Gen Z women in particular, is to just, even though you might want the guy to make the first move, I mean, the least you could do is just make it like super blatantly obvious that you want him to do it, so that he's not as afraid. But if
give a clear green light, and he'll take it from there, I think.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
like
again,
extra clear. Yeah.
No, I would just to build on that a little bit. I think so. I mean, I think I've talked to you, one or both of you, about this. Like, at least when I started in Substack, the anti-woke, whatever you want to call it, mood was very strong, because it got to a fever pitch where I feel like, other than like the most dedicated partisans, people are like, okay, this has gone too far. And I think a lot of it was, and I talked about like, in the, like the BDSM world, like these neo church ladies, basically, it made it very, even like on a platonic level, like we talked about, much less a romantic level. It's become really difficult to have conversations because of it. Or let's just say nothing of dating. There's that, even memes of like, you're trying to talk to a girl and her friends all kind of, jump on you. Or like, we had a previous podcast when we were talking about the movie Her, Yakubian Ape. Shout out to Yakubian Ape. Talked about like, there's accusations of sexual harassment aside, there's that very real fear of your worst shot you shot, being, screenshotted and you being humiliated forever. So I think
Yeah.
that's something that's real. But at the same time, I always like to acknowledge with any of this stuff, the overreaction, it didn't come from nowhere, right? Because there are, Me Too happened for a reason. There's an argument to be made that it kind of got out of hand, became careerist when like Hollywood took over. But these things happen for a reason. The reaction didn't come from nowhere against this stuff, like sexual harassment in the workplace. But that having been said, I think you're right. We're at a point where we're renegotiating gender dynamics. You don't want to be like a total creep and taking advantage of your position if you're at work. But at the same time, that's how people meet in all these social situations that we talk about. So I do think that we're seeing like a renegotiation of gender dynamics, a renegotiation of consent, and maybe more women do want to make the first move, or maybe want to even just like make it explicitly clear, because that's always been like the thing for me. Like even overwhelmingly in my experience, heterosexual women want the man to take the lead. But once you like make it explicitly clear, yes, I'm into you, good, I'm good to go for it. So I think that is something good that we're seeing. Because my sister met her husband because she worked at in retail at the time, and he hit on her and asked for a number, and now they're married. And that's like according to like internet incels and or feminists, that's like the cardinal sin, and rape charges are just around the corner. But in real life, I'm sure that'll happen sometimes, but more often than not, you shoot your shot, didn't work out, or you might end up married a year later.
Yeah.
So.
I'm reminded of the fact that two couples I know, one of them hooked up at a party that I hosted in college. And now they're married, and they've been married for like 15 years. They've been together longer than I have been together with John. And they met at a party that I hosted. And then two of my other best friends, they met at my workplace, and they started dating at my workplace, and now they're married as well. So yeah, but also I was just thinking, I was thinking about times that I've been hit on at work, and how there's like the difference between when it is very creepy and then when it's like, oh, that actually was awesome. That felt really good. And there was a incident recently where actually two things happened. One was a very bad experience where I was hit on by a customer, and it was not, oh my God, made me feel.
Was it an old guy?
Yeah, it was an old guy. But not only was it an old guy, he was jacking off his Pringles can at me.
Oh my God.
Subtle.
Yeah, I was just like I'm going to go vomit behind the building.
That's what I was talking about. It can, these reactions don't come from nowhere.
Exactly. Oh my God, I just felt so gross. And actually, if there's one thing gay men do know, we have a simulacrum of what it feels like to be undressed by an older man, and how disgusting that feels. Does not feel good. Okay, but then there was this other incident at work where this guy, he was very charming, very good looking. He was, I would say, maybe in like his late 30s, early 40s, covered in tattoos, really hot dude. And he was just talking to me. And then he said, I'm still standing here just to keep talking to you, right? And
smooth.
And it was very smooth. And that felt good. Like that, that there are ways to do it. There are ways to do it that
having social skill. Also,
yes.
Step 1, be attractive. Step 2, don't be unattractive.
Yes, exactly.
But
yes, go on.
As a side note, I know we want to end in just a second. I will say that I think that's partially why sometimes straight guys like being friends with gay guys, because like it's so rare that we get hit on. Like even if it's never going to go anywhere, it's like, oh, this is nice. Because personally, like that happens. Like if I very rarely get hit on by like a woman my age. It's like a gay guy or an old lady. I fucking love getting hit on by old ladies or gay guys. Oh. It is just such an ego boost. I will be smiling for weeks. So Any gay guys or old ladies in the audience, if you want to hit on me, just know, it's not going to go anywhere. I'm married, but it will make my day.
Okay, another work story. Multiple times I will have been on my knees stalking a shelf or something, and a little old lady will come up behind me and say, "I just love seeing a young man on his knees." That has happened. That has happened twice, actually.
Oh, wow. That is.
And those little old ladies, they are fucking shameless. They
Yeah, they are. I heard, man, some of the
So
servers I
shameless.
worked with.
Mhm.
Oh yes, completely
They get-
shameless.
Yeah,
We
the
love-
dudes who would get tables of all women, all older women, especially, they'd be like, "Oh my God,
Yeah,
those women are out of their minds."
It
Yes.
is.
out of control.
It will put a smile on your face for a while, I'll say.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think maybe horny old ladies is a good place to call it, folks. What do we say?
Sounds good.
Well,
Okay,
as
so
always,
today, just to recap, we covered horny old ladies, we covered breastfeeding chihuahuas, we covered breastfeeding hairless cats. What else? Those are the
all the other
standouts.
stuff. Yeah, those are kind of the main takeaways. We talked about like reestablishing community, putting yourself out there, the difficulty of reestablishing intimate relationships in modernity when we're augmented by technology. But breastfeeding chihuahuas is kind of the important part, I think.
Yeah,
Agreed.
that was the theme for sure.
I'm really tempted to name the episode that, but what a
You
lot.
should.
In any case,
I know
well,
what we should name our
everybody-
live stream later.
Oh, yes. Okay. Maybe we'll save it for that. But as always, I appreciate you guys coming on. We'll have to do this again. I think we have a great dynamic. Everybody, thank you for listening. And if you want to hear more of us, we'll do this more often.
Yes.
We